Top 5 unpopular opinions about knife, everyday carry, those types of goods. I'll start with one popular opinion though, that I stole this video idea from my friend Nick Shabazz. Oh yeah, I saw it this morning, got an instant YouTube knife boner, and thought, well, I'm going to make my own because that's just fun to talk about. Let's get straight into it. I'm going to do 5 knife or gear related ones, and then I'm going to do one life related one right at the end. So you all stand by and see which that one is. It won't be what you expect. Unpopular opinion number 1. Knife weight has far too much emphasis, and heavy knives, as long as they are well shaped, are absolutely fine for most of us to carry. So, this knife and this knife weigh the same. This is quite a big burly knife, and they're both 7-ounce knives. This is a very long, very also burly knife. This is a heavy knife. It's about an ounce lighter, the ZT-0220. That's the Hardcore Hardware MILF number 4, and this is the cold steel holdout. Really, as long as you're not using up too much pocket space is where I think we need to really sort of put the fuss line rather than at weight. Yeah, the Benchmade bug out is 1.8 ounces. That's awesome. Is it? Does it really matter? Like, are you that efficient about what you're carrying in your pockets in terms of, you know, I absolutely must watch every ounce? Is your belt that weak that your pants will fall down, revealing your buttocks to the world if you have an extra ounce or 2 in your pocket? Really, this knife here is about half the weight of this knife here. The only thing that really I notice when I'm carrying either of them is that this pocket clip is a bit tighter than this one, and this knife is a little bit wider this way than this one. Only just. It's just kind of a bit more down there. Really, in my pockets, because my pants are held up with a belt, and they are not slacks, I guess, they're not tracksuit pants, the weight does really not matter at all to me. And I know that is an unpopular opinion, for certain. Trying to fit this sort of thing into your pocket, that's where it starts to become a bit outrageous. And that absolutely is a design thing that maybe be worth looking a bit harder at than just counting the ounces, because really these two knives do the same thing. This one's a bit heavier because it's thicker and stouter and whatnot, and more steel in it, all that sort of business. But really the footprint is about the same, and that is what matters to me. Unpopular opinion number 2. It takes about the same amount of time to open any one-handed knife. So deployment speed for anything other than fun purposes is really not an issue at all. This 0220 is the most easily deploying knife of all of these. It flies out. It flies out in probably about 0.2 of a second. This Spidey Chef here is probably the slowest deployment. It probably flies out in about 1 second with my thumb. I have never been, and I don't foresee I ever will be, in a situation where that actually has a practical effect on me using the knife. That also goes for knives like this that you can wave out of your pocket and whatnot. That is like a self-defense type thing, and this is not a very good flipper. This is a knife that you're supposed to open like that. You can flip it if you give it a bit of wrist. This is a Viper keeper, by the way. But realistically, there is some difference between this and this, for certain. 2 hands, 1 hand may bother you a little bit, but putting a lot of weight in the deployment for any other reason apart from saying, you know what, it's just more fun, is kinda silly. And that's my second unpopular opinion. We can all chase things in the name of fun. Absolutely. Fidget factor, a massive, massive point of knife collection for me. But trying to justify it with a real world reason why this needs to be quicker than this, in terms of actual seconds to use, even when you fumble it like I just did then, to me is just not worth the time to argue about. That is my second unpopular opinion. Number 3, and I know this is going to sound very strange coming from me, but having top of the line ultimate edge holding steels for your everyday carry is not particularly important if you know how to sharpen. Let's look at these knives on the table. D2 steel, S35EN, CTS XHP, LC200N, all of these are very good edge holding steels. D2 is probably the lowest according to my testing, and is an old steel. It's, you know, in the mid hundreds perhaps at best, and it's fine. And what I'm saying is, if you know how to sharpen, then this is about as good as you ever actually need to go. Lots of these unpopular things are going to be about what people perceive they need rather than what they might actually need. So the perceived need is you need the best steel ever so you never have to sharpen it. My unpopular opinion is that just get a steel from a knife that you like the design in, and as long as it isn't super soft, and yeah, I've done a video on this before, I would say super soft is, if you go by my rope numbers, maybe under 60. You know, as long as it isn't that, then you're really not going to be too hindered by any real edge retention issues. If you are a knife guy that uses a lot of different knives, if it is your one knife and you don't know how to sharpen very well, then yeah, maybe don't settle for anything less than the 20 CV, for sure. However, if you're a knife guy, then being a steel snob is going to really restrict the amount of models that you're going to be happy to try. With me, I personally stop at about 60. I don't go with ACR 13 MOVs anymore if I can help it. They're a little bit too, even as a reviewer, I find myself needing to sharpen them mid-review. This AUS 8 here is lower than I would go again. I love this knife, but I've had to sharpen it so much the blade is starting to retreat up the blade face a little bit, which is no good because I cut up a bunch of cardboard boxes and it is dull as a butter knife. So that is kind of the thing that I'd be suggesting. We're putting a little bit too much emphasis on chasing those super steels that we suddenly start seeing no other good models anywhere because they don't have the M390 or the CTS XHP or anything like that. This is a lovely knife model, something very different, something very unusual, the Viper Keeper, and it's in D2 steel, and that is as good as it gets. So, being a steel snob may well limit your knife experience. Unpopular opinion number 4. There are too many tactical Tomahawks. Now, tactical Tomahawks are over proliferated. Every knife company makes a couple of them. And from a siegecraft point of view, I absolutely see the value in them. For someone who has a very specific need for that tool, then yes, they make a good breaching tool in a complement of other breaching tools. If you ever see the back of a riot van or a police operations van or any sort of van like that, you're going to see several types of tools. There'll be long crowbar types, there'll be sledgehammers, there'll be the two-handed door ram, and yeah, a tactical Tomahawk might, not even all, might be in that van. But to civilianize them so much as they have been, and market them as if they're going to do the jobs of axes in the woods and whatnot, I have not found that to be true at all. And I think that you pay a lot of money for slabs of pretty uncomfortable to hold steel that you may never realize its full potential, because as a civilian you're most likely not going to be smashing down too many doors. Now, again, very, very cool things. I completely get that. If you think they're cool and you enjoy having a collection of them, no problems whatsoever. But I don't think that they are all that cracked up for doing any actual job that a civilian, a normal person, is going to be using them for. I think, and I've had a few of them. They are often slabbed on either side, big long handle. You take them out, try and cut a tree down, it hurts your hand. You know what, I guess if you're going to be breaking into something, then it's probably good to have that crowbar on one end and a hammer and the axe head on the other end to smash through those doors. But again, for the amount that are out there, I think they're kind of over proliferated, and just I find them a little bit cringy, to be honest. And that's, you know, this is probably less practical and less, this is really just opinion based, but man, the tactical Tomahawk phenomenon, I just don't get it. And I know that's probably a quite unpopular opinion. Unpopular opinion number 5, maybe the most unpopular opinion. The EDC and general folding and even fixed blade knife world needs to distance itself in order to grow from the tactical, survival, military, law enforcement angle of marketing and use. I'm not saying those knives need to vanish. I'm not saying we need to stop saying that these knives would be good for that thing. I'm just saying that all the companies need to acknowledge that if they want to grow and reach those people who aren't into knives at all, which is what they do want to do, they need to understand that those types of things and subjects and behaviors do not turn a vast majority of the population on. Last time I checked, most members of the population had 2 hands and occasionally need to cut things. There is something going wrong that those people are spooked by knives. And I think it is somewhat, you know, the fault of the media, but we do ourselves no favors when majority of the advertising for knives is about how well it did in the army, how this soldier carried it in Desert Storm and it saved his life, and how, you know, this policeman carried this knife and he used it to, you know, someone grabbed his gun and he cut the guy's wrist, and that is not constructive for those people. I'm not saying that that's bad, and I'm not detracting from any of those purposes or uses of knives, absolutely, but we've won all those people over that those types of arguments and marketing strategies are going to win over. They're already on side with this. They're not, you know, they can't probably be buying any more knives than they're already buying, and that's why we're seeing the knife sales start to slow. They boomed and now they're stopping because everyone who likes knives they responded to that marketing largely, and they're here already. We need to stop having, you know, this rugged, extreme image just because it's a sharp thing. I know that so many companies are not saying, yeah, our knives are for killing, but you must understand how people who aren't knife orientated think. And you can be cocky or arrogant and say, well, we just don't want those people holding knives anyway, but that's completely false. You do. You do want those people interested in knives and carrying knives and not being scared of knives. And the best way you can do that is putting the idea out of your mind that knives are for fighting and killing. You know, and it's unpopular because that's what lots of people enjoy, the fantasy or the actual practice or whatever of using knives for fighting, for killing, for taking to war, for all that sort of stuff. Cool. You know what else is a really handy tool? A screwdriver. I would say a knife is a handier tool in day-to-day than a screwdriver, but every person has a set of screwdrivers at their house. Only probably 20% of us have a folding knife, maybe even less. Maybe 10% of American males have a folding knife in their pocket or in their house. Why is that? The screwdriver is just as dangerous. You can kill someone with a screwdriver. I've seen it. People get killed with screwdrivers probably more than they get killed with knives. They are sharp pieces of steel that you can skewer someone with. But there is never a suggestion that they get carried for that. And that's largely in the marketing. The marketing is just like, hey, our screwdrivers have really good sharp heads and they won't warp when you turn tough screws. And, you know, hey, ours could maybe even be used for prying paint lids open. That's as far as a pure practicality. A folding knife is a tool that is about as old as a screwdriver. And yet we have just gone this full way. And I know it's great for getting a foothold audience. We've gone completely the other way, and so much of our marketing, whether it's subtle, whether it's just a guy wearing, you know, police uniform or military pants holding a knife and, you know, it's all faded and he looks really cool with his big muscly arm. Either that's the image or it's just outright, our knives are the #1 choice for Navy SEALs. That, as I said, it sells to people who are already on our team. But if we want to be selling to the people who are not yet on our team, we need to start, and I think it has started, but we really need to, as both companies and as YouTubers and knife commentators, just be emphasizing the practicality of the things. Bring up how good they are at fighting people a lot later in the argument. Bring out how great they'll be in your bug out bag a lot later in the argument. Because the knife industry isn't going to grow anymore, and there's more and more companies coming out competing for the same people, for all of us who that stuff has worked on, you know, to whatever levels of success. But if those companies all want to start grabbing a little bit of extra bits of the market, they need to start thinking what Victorinox think. This is the knife equivalent of a screwdriver. This right here. Most people have one of these in their house, and you know what? They even use the blade on it. You know why? Because Victorinox, even though it's a Swiss army knife, have never publicized that these are used in any sort of hard use, intense, you know, survival sort of sense, apart from perhaps in the Boy Scouts. It's a perfectly marketed tool, and as such, they are everywhere. Victorinox will share tall tales about these for sure. I think that's, so maybe that's Leatherman, of them just coming to the rescue when people's cars break down, or people getting stuck, you know, when they're camping and needing to have like a fish cleaner and they have to use their army knife. Or they'll share all sorts of tales. People using them for little, you know, I got stuck and my glasses screw fell out and I was just about to give a big talk. That's what you need to be telling everyone else. There is no reason that this should be a more acceptable knife to have in your house than this. Even though this opens a bit easier and has better blade steel and is just a knife. They should be just as acceptable at each other, and it's up to us, as well as the marketing companies, to make it so. So that's my 5th most unpopular opinion. And I think that is fairly unpopular right now, especially with the knife community on YouTube. And lastly, the lottery is a tax on hope, and we shouldn't do it anymore. And unpopular opinion number 6, non-knife related. I think the lottery should stop. I think lotteries are terrible. And I think that they are a tax on people's hope, and I think it is insipid that they have programmed us all to think, geez, if I don't go and do this week, this might be the week that my numbers come up and that I do win. Even though the smartest people in the world will know that they are not going to win the lottery, but they still do it. And this is intelligent people. It targets people with not a great deal of disposable income. So, you know who doesn't play the lottery? You know who doesn't play the lottery? Really rich people. Even though they could use an extra couple of $1 million. It targets just us. It's us. It's an extra, it's skimming off the top of all of us, profiting on our like hope, on that little twinkle that it puts in our head through the last probably 60 years of media. And, you know, it's making us want to be this extra layer of, you know, upper class. It's this pursuit of this, I want to be a millionaire because everyone can be a millionaire. It's not at all. And we should all be happy with our lives the way they are and not need that fantasy every Friday night about, I could win this tonight and I'm going to get this, this and this if I'm going to win it. Because you know what, as entertaining as that is to think, it's also kind of crushing when it doesn't happen. And it's this cycle that everyone is in. And we just need to think a bit more about it. Who is gaining from the lottery? Yeah, a couple of people win $900 million or whatever it is every couple of years. Great, but the rest of us are putting in thousands of dollars over our lifetimes into something that is a nothing tax. You're getting nothing from it. It's just the same as gambling. It is fruitless, and I've been mystified forever why people play the lottery routinely, week to week, when they know that it is not a secret that your chances of winning are 1 in 3 million. Like, I just cannot fathom it. People aren't going to stop doing it, and I would just love to see everyone just go, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to save that money every week, put it into my kid's tuition account, and then when my kid's 19, he'll be able to go to university. And I won't have ever pretended that I might have become instantly from some fairy tale like the new super rich, super successful person with a golden house. That's just my thought on the lottery, and I think it's just a piece of shit, and I hate it. It's an unpopular opinion, I know, because everyone plays the lottery, probably except for me, but there you go. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope I've presented my arguments in a way that won't provoke aggressive responses, but I'm very curious to hear responses. So by all means, let me know down below, what do you think about my 5 unpopular opinions? Alright dudes, see you later.